Ashraf. I'm Professor of Organizations and Impact and the Academic Director of the Skoll Center for Social Entrepreneurship here at Said Business School at the University of Oxford. And I'm really delighted to welcome you to today's seminar, both those of you joining in person and those of you joining online. This center and the seminar series are really a flagship of what we do here. And the reason is that they're all about bridging research and practice. And so the title of the seminar series, Insights for Action, really captures that. And today we're very much doing that with the group of discussion partners that are here with me today. And really the objective is to bring research insights into the field and to bring insights from practice back into the research and have mutual learning between those two. And today we're doing that with a focus on social entrepreneurship in conflict and post-conflict settings. And we will learn from social entrepreneurs and scholars who are working in and studying those settings. And I hope we will also learn from all of you. So let me just introduce today's speakers and then we'll get into the conversation. So first I'm joined by Professor Ilona Revko. Ilona is an academic visitor with us at the Skoll Center, and she's supported in her visit here by a British Academy Fellowship. Her research focuses on stakeholder relationships in social entrepreneurship ecosystems, and she's doing comparative research on this, which you'll hear about, across the UK, Poland, and Ukraine. And she's really focusing on understanding how to build stakeholder relationships and ecosystems that can foster resilience and rebuilding. Ilona is also a professor at Chernihiv Polytechnic National University in Ukraine, and in that role, she has over a decade of experience teaching a number of topics, including social entrepreneurship, but also leadership and sustainable development, and working both in research and in practice to build capacity. I'm also joined by Shoshana Stewart. Shoshana is the president of Turquoise Mountain, which is an NGO founded in 2006 in Afghanistan by His Majesty King Charles, with the goal of preserving cultural heritage and supporting artisans in places where their traditions are under threat. Shoshana joined Turquoise Mountain in 2006 and lived in Afghanistan for 5 years and has really led in a really transformative way, as we'll hear about, led the project, creating over 25,000 jobs, bringing over 150 historic buildings, restoring them, bringing 17 million US dollars of crafts to market, and providing primary health care for almost 200,000 people, among a number of other accomplishments. And so we'll hear about some of this work as we get into the conversation. So welcome, Shoshana. And finally, I'm joined by Freshta Karim, who is the founder of Charmaz, which is a Kabul-based NGO that operates mobile libraries for children in Afghanistan. And since 2017, Charmaz has provided literacy, numeracy, and critical thinking opportunities for over 500,000 children who otherwise wouldn't have access to high quality education. And as we may hear a bit about, Freshta has been inspired in this work by her experience as a child TV show host in Afghanistan and has really dedicated her work and her life to empowering Afghan children through education. So I look forward to unpacking some of those experiences as well. So I want to get into the conversation, and I'm going to start with Shoshana, start with you, and then turn to you, Freshta, and really to ask you to speak a little bit about what does social entrepreneurship look like in these particular kinds of contexts. And just to set the stage, at the Skoll Center, I mean, we are a center for social entrepreneurship and have a long history of doing work with social entrepreneurs. And we talk a lot about the challenges of doing that work. But mainly when we talk about the challenges of doing that work, we're looking across many contexts and many geographies, and we often mean the challenges of building a venture that's got to be economically sustainable, whatever its sort of financing strategy is, a venture that's economically sustainable, but driving towards a social purpose. And I'm sure that undeniably those are challenges you all face, but I want to zoom in on the particular kinds of challenges that are surfaced by working in the kinds of contexts in which you're working. And so tell us, to start, Shoshana, a little bit about what is involved in being a social entrepreneur in the kinds of contexts in which you're working.
Wonderful. Is this working? It is perfect. Hello, everyone. I'm going to show you pictures and tell you. Absolutely. We are a cultural heritage organization, but the backbone of this is social entrepreneurship. So let me show you what that looks like. This is Seema. She is a weaver from Afghanistan, the Central Highlands, Bamyan. And she learned to weave from her mother and her grandmother before that. And she makes this. So you can buy this on the King's Road in London through a creative partner of ours, Christopher Farr. And actually, as I walked in the lobby, I saw two beautiful Christopher Farr carpets out there. I start here with this carpet as a way of explaining what it is that we do. We support artisans where their traditions, and often they, are under threat. But we do it in any way we need to make sure that they can thrive and they can pass it on to the next generation. So this is the central way, which is about social entrepreneurship. It is about bringing products to market and bringing incomes back into families, right? This is about Christopher Farr selling this on the King's Road and bringing income back into Seema's house. But we also do all sorts of other stuff. And this gets to your question, right? What does it look like to support social entrepreneurs in urban and rural Afghanistan? Well, sometimes it looks like primary health and primary education, which we can talk more about. In Myanmar, this is a picture of a place outside of Mandalay, Amarapura, which was sort of the epicenter of the earthquake. These are houses on stilts, which just collapse. But this same area had catastrophic flooding in October. And so what this looks for us like in this case is getting everybody together, the weavers that we work with, figuring out what's broken, handing out water purification tablets. We rebuilt about 180 looms over the course of the last few months from the flooding, but now we're damaged again. So really anything we need to. We've been in Afghanistan for 20 years, as you said, but as of 10 years ago, we've been in Myanmar. This is Dali Ba on the lower right, and then different parts of the Middle East. This is Abu Nidal on the upper right from Damascus, with whom we work in Jordan, and Nadia Abu Ghattas from Bethlehem in Palestine on the lower right. And so what this looks like today is supporting about 10,000 artisans across these different places. By support, I mean full-time employment through the export of their products and anything we need to do to make sure they can do that. So just to take an example, on the left is a woman named Saida Etabari, and she trained to be a jeweler with us in Afghanistan. And this is a British jewelry designer called Pippa Small, who lives in London. And Pippa has been traveling to Afghanistan twice a year for 16 years. She was out there very recently. She and Saida have known each other for over a decade. She sits with a lot of different artisans, looks at designs, looks at stones. They create a collection. She goes home, but she places an order. That woman has bought millions of dollars worth of Afghan jewelry herself. And it's not just a route to market, but it is also a mentoring relationship. She is also supporting Saida to become a designer in her own right. So this is Saida's collection, which you can buy through ishkar.com, sort of London, Paris-based e-commerce site. But again, this is social entrepreneurship in the case of Saida, right? This is about design, it's about a route to market, but it's about a lot of different things. How does an Afghan woman in her 20s build a business in the downtown of Kabul? So that's about an incubation space that is a safe space. That's about financing. That's about teaching basic accounting skills and human resources. You're going to employ people? How are you going to pay Afghan tax? Let's look at setting up those services. So all that sort of support. And I think that sense of place is very important. I mean, we are here at Oxford in a place that matters, right? This is not a random room in an industrial park. This building matters, the community matters, the conversation matters, the plants matter, right? This is our home in the old city of Kabul. And for artisans, tradition and beauty and architecture matters so much. So this is right in the middle of Kabul, right on the banks of the Kabul River, right across the street from the presidential palace. But when we began, it was 40% destroyed after decades of war. So we restored the buildings. This is before and after. So Saida learned to be a jeweler in one of those rooms. And just to conclude, I wanted to come back to carpets, which is the biggest thing that we do actually in Afghanistan, but anywhere. We make everything from traditional to contemporary carpets. Mariam says it best, I think. It's not new for us to experience hard days. 22 years ago, we also had hard days as refugees in Pakistan, but still we had great support through our weaving. I can tell you when the men of the household cannot find a job, our profession of weaving guarantees us females having jobs. It means that weaving is very important. We love our weaving. It's part of our culture. We feel honored to do this. So Mariam is one of 8,000 people that we will support in Afghanistan this year, nearly all of whom are women. Almost without exception, are the only breadwinners in their homes. So all of the money is coming in through the woman of the household, all of the services. Why? It is because it is social entrepreneurship, because it is the private sector. The reason that this is safe is because it is the private sector. That is fine. So that is interesting. And I have really seen this across all the places in which we work. And I'll go to this final slide, which is representative of a few things that connects here. One is artisans from different places of conflict. So this is a suite we made for the Connaught Hotel in London, a 5-star hotel. This brings together 100 artisans, Syrian, Myanmar, and Afghan. It's also a connection with the Said Business School. Turquoise Mountain was created through a partnership with the Said family. And in fact, support and partnership has created all of these different projects. But the thing that I have noticed across all of these places over the last 5 years in particular, if I think about social entrepreneurship in conflict, it's been a terrible 5 years in many ways, right? It began with COVID, which was disproportionately terrible for people without a social safety net. Then the Burmese military took over in a coup. Then the Taliban took over in Afghanistan. Then the war in the Middle East. You figure out real quick whether what you do matters at all. Because if it doesn't, nobody's going to come. When the war's on, nobody's going to come. And we watched cultural heritage be this kind of unicorn, which allowed us to do more, not less, in conflict. I mean, it's back to that, why do I have safe access to 8,000 women's homes? It is because we are doing cultural heritage and social entrepreneurship. It is that combination of bringing incomes and growing the economy with something that is fundamentally an asset of that place. Strength, not a deficit, if you will. But anyway, that is what it looks like for us.
Okay, thank you so much. And I want to come back to that in a little bit of the sort of the paradox of what we might expect would become harder actually has been the thing that has enabled you to flourish and your work to flourish. But first, Fresha, let me turn to you. So tell us a bit about your work as a social entrepreneur and your journey and what that has looked like in the particular contexts that you're operating in.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So the pictures you saw, that is home for me. I am from Afghanistan and I grew up there. And I actually studied here in the University of Oxford. And when I returned to Afghanistan, I worked as a child journalist when I was 12 years old. And I got the chance to interview a lot of children in my peer group. And as a child, or probably as a teenager, I got exposed to a lot of children and their stories. Children who were working as carpet weavers, children who were working in mechanic shops, children who could go to school, children who could not go to school, children who had dreams, and children who didn't have dreams. And I thought that, well, I was frustrated that being a journalist and interviewing children and interviewing politicians not bringing any change. So let me study politics. Later, I got a chance, came to Oxford, studied public policy, went back to Afghanistan, studied politics. That is when I realized that for politics to change, something really fundamental has to change. Children of that country must have better opportunities. They must have the skills to ask right questions. And they must have the basic foundations to be able to grow to adults to bring that change. Also, Afghanistan is a very young country. 93% of Afghan children cannot gain basic literacy and numeracy skills by the age 10. It's no wonder where we are right now in a conflict, because we are not investing. We have never truly invested in children in our country. Yes, access had got better in Afghanistan, but access is not equal to quality education. So that's exactly what we are doing. In 2018, we launched this project. We took old public buses and turned them to mobile libraries. And then we started with one library, and now we have 17 libraries across Kabul city. And very soon we are also launching in Bamyan. What happens inside these libraries is the children come to these libraries. We have all our libraries are run by female librarians. We have a team of 88 wonderful colleagues that inspire me every single day. And when children visit our libraries, we make sure that they improve their literacy skills, and we have a lot of games that help them improve their well-being. Two things that are at the core of what we do and what is important for us. And both of them address two major problems in Afghanistan: lack of literacy and the trauma that the country has suffered and children are currently suffering. So that's our work. And when a child visits our library, we make sure they are seen and heard and are respected, things that often in our context, often children are do not experience it for the specific contextual reasons. And in terms of what does it mean to work in that context and be creative and innovate? I think as Shoshana was saying, past 5 years have been extremely difficult. When I started in 2018, this project, it was a very different country that I knew, a very different ecosystem. I could feel it, I could see it. I was going to different morning TV shows to let parents know about importance of literacy and reading books for joy. But now my role is very different. I don't do that anymore. Today, our work and how we function is very different that I would be happy to discuss in a moment.
Wonderful. Thank you. We are going to come back to that. I want to ask you though, Alona, because you're looking at ecosystems, right? And so the contexts in which social entrepreneurs are working, and you've looked at 3 different settings from the one that we've heard about. Tell us what is emerging from your research as you look across the social entrepreneurship ecosystems in Ukraine, in Poland, and here in the UK. And what are you learning from that about what is most important in moments and times of conflict?
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having me. Huge thank you, Shoshana and Eshta, for sharing your experience, extremely experience to be social entrepreneurs in conflict and post-conflict zones. My fascination with social entrepreneurship began nearly a decade ago. I've been teaching social entrepreneurship to diverse audiences, from master students in my home university in Chernihiv city, northern Ukraine, to military and member of community. After visiting the numerous social enterprises across Europe, I've been absolutely expressed of the resilience and creativity to run business in such difficult circumstances, especially in conflict zone. Well, now my research more focus, and Mariah mentioned about 3 dimensions. It's in Ukraine, across Ukraine, Poland, and in the UK. What I want to say about Ukraine and concentrate on some examples and cases, Ukrainian cases. First of all, social entrepreneurship in Ukraine shows really resilience, exceptional resilience. And this focus on resilience building shifts from individual enterprises to social entrepreneurship ecosystem, necessitating collaborative leadership practices that engage different stakeholders, different group of stakeholders like private sector, public and civil society sectors, including educational institutions, because knowledge and especially for social entrepreneurs are extremely important for now, and community. As one of the examples, I want to mention Urban Space 100, and in Ivano-Frankivsk and Urban Space 500 in Kiev. It's social enterprises, community restaurants, which was created in 2015. Actually, it was created by 100 and 500 co-founders, according to these names like Urban Space 100 and Urban Space 500, who each invested $1,000, and actually 80% of profits reinvested to different social projects to improving the cities and better place for everyone. Before full-scale invasion in Ukraine in 2022, these enterprises were focused more on different kind of projects like heritage reconstruction, cultural initiatives. But after that, now they like change a lot of things, especially now they're more focused on war centered problems. They supported military, displaced persons, and different psychological centers who support people and military as well. And actually, it's one of these co-founder mentions that it's about share value and solidarity. Of course, if you talk about Ukrainian cases and Ukrainian social entrepreneurship in general in war settings, important to say about the role of community. Because the power of community and actually this transformative power community now, it's like an engine of social change. And one of the another example is social entrepreneurship, development of social entrepreneurship veterans business in Ukraine from 2015. And one of the first veteran social enterprise was created in Kiev. It's called Pizza Veterano. And actually, this enterprise reinvests 10% of the profit to the social mission to support military and member of the family. And also important to mention that later, this enterprise and this veteran social enterprise initiatives were shifts to like veteran group in Ukraine, which include different kind of social enterprises in different sectors, from coffee shop to different kind of services, even renewable energy. And what is important, because it's like a community. These people support each other, they share their trauma, they understood each other, and through this they try to support each other. According to this, we can see that like when compare social entrepreneurship in different countries, especially in my case in Poland, in Ukraine, and in the UK, we can really mention about like specific of Ukrainian cases where community plays extremely important role in development of this sector, in this ecosystem in general. When, for example, in other countries, like more institutional support or maybe governmental support, more visible and important.
Okay, thank you. I want to pick up on your comments about community and collective, which are really important to a lot of the work that we do at the center, which is really grounded in sort of bridging and connecting and bringing together both individuals who share experiences and, importantly, those who don't and who are coming from different perspectives. And as we often note and recognize, at the heart of doing that, even if it's about community and collective, there are individuals doing that work. And so I want to come to this question of leadership and the kinds of leadership qualities and skills that are required of social entrepreneurs in the context that we're talking about, where one, there are many challenges for any individual and leader, and two, we have the sort of collective potential, and yet someone's got to be doing that orchestrating work. And Freshta, maybe I'll come to you first. Tell us a little bit about what are some of the leadership qualities and skills that you have found to be particularly important in your work?
Thank you. So about the context that we work in, just quickly to kind of give you a picture of how the context looks like. Often in context of entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship, the ecosystem is developed in a way in many countries that it allows you to progress, to scale, for example, or to have connections, to have collaborations, or to have government support, which I think is extremely important. Or have media support and others. But in the context of conflict, or particularly in the context that I work, the ecosystem works against you. So you don't have the support of it, rather it works against you. And also it's extremely unpredictable. You don't know what happens. Like every morning when I wake up, I look at my phone, and if I don't have any bad message, I'm like, oh, this is a good day. And then So unpredictability, the ecosystem works against you. And then scale, the frustration of not being able to scale. Like I had this dream for our libraries that in 7 years, we will be going to these many provinces, we will reach out to this number of children. But it was a very hard lesson for me to learn that progress means we need to redefine progress in the context of conflict. Progress sometimes would mean that keeping the libraries open, that is progress, and that should be considered a huge progress. But what happens is that you work in different ecosystems. So your funders are generally outside the country, and for them, progress means very different thing. Their definitions are very different. So you work in a very difficult context, but then you have funders that have expectations of a social project that would probably be running in London or India or somewhere else, which have their own challenges, but it's very different. So you need to probably, it takes me to kind of a skills as leader that you need to have. You need to negotiate every little bit of negotiation, and you need to authentically put forward your argument and stand by it, and know that there will be people that will support your work, but there will be people that will not be aligned, and that is entirely okay. So that negotiation skills and having a good team is I've realized that it's a teamwork, and you need to share the burden of that. When the tough days come, you need to sit with your team and allow yourself to cry. And when the good days come, which are very rare, you need to celebrate it and celebrate it big. So negotiation, teamwork, and acknowledgement of the fact that progress means a very different thing. And as a leader, you need to, considering these things, you need to strategize how you want to function in those contexts.
Okay, thank you. I want to pick up on two things that you said before we move on. So one is about leadership, and I mean, you talked about negotiation, but in that was something about being comfortable with disappointing people and not being able to get everyone on your side. And that when we talk about and teach about leadership is so fundamental, the sort of ability to tolerate that you're disappointing people and to move on and to find the allies and the wins. But that's part of what it is, right? And that move on and the allies and the wins and the progress may seem at times excruciatingly slow. And that is really fundamental to systemic change. And the pace is different. It's nonlinear. We don't know exactly where we're going or how we're going to get there. We're sort of finding our way. So thank you for bringing those out. Shoshana, let me turn to you. Tell us a little bit about the leadership qualities or skills that you have used and surfaced in your work. And I'm mindful also, maybe I'll bring this in now, that you're coming from a different setting going into Afghanistan rather than being from Afghanistan. So perhaps speak to that a bit as well.
Absolutely. So I think what Prashya John said resonates a lot in two things in particular. One is the dealing with unpredictability. I think leaders and social entrepreneurs always need to deal with that, but it's a like 10x situation because one of the things that I have watched, I was in Jordan, Syria, Palestine for about 3 weeks in March, and it was as the cuts from the US administration were really taking hold and took hold in Jordan in a very, very big way, including like knocking many percentage points off the Jordanian government's budget. I watched as systems around us just sort of ground to a halt and kind of turned in on themselves. And I watched myself and our staff just be like, recalibrate, because we are accustomed to extreme variability. Regime change, money just disappears, massive inflation, whatever. It doesn't normally come from Washington, but it happens all the time. So not being hardwired for structure is totally essential. It's not, non-linear doesn't begin to explain it. So I think that's part of it. The other thing I wanted to pick up on what you were talking about, scale. This is something that really matters to me because, you know, if you think about sort of Silicon Valley on one extreme, wonderful sort of blitz scaling idea of Reid Hoffman and others, that tends all of us toward a sense that scaling is how you change the world, right? And it can lead us into, give me a solution. But if you can't bring it to scale, I don't want to hear about it. That doesn't work in my world, because if you have a malicious or broken system, you can't scale within it. It's not a thing. So what does that mean? Does it mean you just don't do it? Does it mean you just go, oh, too difficult, can't do it? To your question, right? I am not from Afghanistan. Freshta can't get rid of the issues of Afghanistan. You are Afghan. I could just leave, right? So the question is, when you cannot scale, is it worth doing anything on a human scale? Absolutely. I mean, that is what, I mean, you and I will share this experience, and I expect you will feel this way in Ukraine as well. When you can make a transformational difference in a single person's life, or 10 people, or 100 people, that's a really big deal. How can that not be meaningful? So I think that the scale conversation can be really problematic when you have broken systems. More systems are breaking. The international development system is currently breaking because of the withdrawal of that funding and those relationships. So I think that reorienting our sense that if you can't scale, it's just less good and it's a failure, toward a sense that there's actually something really beautiful in working on a human scale. And as you said, that is where, you know, ground up systemic change comes from. It doesn't come from anywhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things we're trying to do in some of our work at the center is really to open up, what do we mean by scale? And scale can be scale up, but it doesn't have to be. And there are other ways of scaling impact, scaling deep, broadly, at a human level, as you say, that are really, really important. And we need more surfacing of that as a really valuable route to impact. I want to come to another related question, which is on the leadership and the doing of this work, which is navigating the trauma that is in the context in which you're working, that both as individuals and with the people we're working with may be carrying. And so reflect a bit on each of you, and perhaps Ellen, I'll start with you on sort of how leaders can do that, how you have done that, how you've seen others do that in the context you've worked in.
Well, talk about trauma, especially in these cases which I talk about with social business. One of the social entrepreneur veteran told me that at first they just started to run the social enterprise. They thought about to create job for themselves. But after that, they really realize they do something more. They create a community where each other understand this trauma without have to explain. And actually, again, sorry, the power of this community helps them like to thrive through this trauma and post-trauma syndrome. Moreover, at my university in Chernihiv, we conduct amazing project for military. It's called like resocialization adaptation to civilian life. Through this project, we think that it's like one of the way to adapt to civilian life for to military. It's like to find your passion, transform this passion in your business idea, maybe social enterprise in future. And it's really helps them adapt to civilian life, to find yourself, to manage with all of this trauma and post-trauma syndrome. And perhaps the final side of this trauma, not only for social entrepreneurs, but for people whom they help. For example, for me as a refugee, important when social enterprises provide enough support for people, they understand their trauma, they organize, for example, in the UK, in Oxford, have amazing social enterprise, the Old Fire Station, and they really use a case study as a methodology to manage with trauma as well, like with people's problem.
Okay, thank you. Freshta, any reflections on this from your work?
How can I not have a reflection? I'm the target of that all trauma. Yeah, so I think with trauma, it's when I was working in Afghanistan and for a while after the political collapse, I actually felt that I'm a very strong person. I'm gonna get through this. We got this. That's actually when it hit me, and I had a terrible burnout. And as process of that, I also feel like for me personally, it was a blessing. It allowed me to look at a lot of things that I probably before that had not looked at it. But actually, it also made me realize at the organizational level, at the level of how leaders working in contexts where they're more exposed to trauma at primary level, at secondary level, how there is literally no support. Just imagining, for example, if you imagine yourself, you're a leader from there, and a majority of your work, of course, leading your team, but also your work is fundraising. And you go to one of your donors as a leader, and in the middle of that, what are you expected? How do they want to see you? They want to see you strong, almost all the time, full of energy, full of solutions, kind of being very, very resilient. And almost sometimes before going to these meetings, it almost makes me feel like as if it questions me, what is it there that they think that a leader needs to be almost this, there's a box that you needs to fit in with that. And only you can talk about your trauma once you have get over it. For example, now I know that I've gone over it a little bit, and now I'm like, oh, I had a burnout there, but I didn't have that space to say it then. And I will not have that space if I get to that dark place again. That's because our systems are not ready to have leaders who are exposed to that, and leaders who are to give them the proper support. And then the question of what does that proper support look like? Does it mean to send them to therapy? What does it really look like? How overworked we are, how under-resourced we are, and how it almost, for me personally, looks like my home is burning. All the things that I believed in today, opposite of it is happening. And what do I need to do? I think for me personally, it looks like acknowledgement and a systematic change, both within the organization, but also within the funder community. We need to have more resources for leaders and for organizations to be able to deal with this and continue doing good work that they're doing.
Okay, thank you. And I was going to ask this at the end, but I think this is the right time to ask this question, given what you've just said, which is, given the kinds of trauma and challenges that you're all dealing with, and given that we aren't where you've just said we need to go, and we're working to get there in terms of the system and the recognition from funders and others within the system of what leaders are going through, what kinds of supports are needed, and the sort of, long ways we still have to go to be at the place where that's recognized and provided. How do each of you keep yourselves going in doing this work? I'll turn to you first.
Well, I think it certainly relates to the previous question. And I too hit a total wall, collapsed in a heap, and was very traumatized for various reasons. And I'm sort of on the other side of it, but I think it is not usually a thing and I now talk about it openly because I also watch many of my staff members dealing with it. So then if we zoom to the leadership part of that, if I think, I can remember a phone call with my director in Palestine in the West Bank. And, she was like, well, one of my staff members couldn't come into work today and came in yesterday and came in today because his brother was killed in Gaza. And I know that she has absolutely no idea how to deal with that person, nor do I have any idea how to deal with that person. This is not about being Palestinian or not Palestinian. I know through my own burnout that I had no idea how my brain works and how we can sort of obfuscate the way we think about things and bury memories and all this crazy stuff, right? Nobody knows that stuff until you study it, you learn about it, you experience it. And I'm very humbled by this. I know that I am not equipped to manage properly through trauma. And we have actually, as an organization, tried to seek out, can somebody explain to us and help train our directors for how we deal with trauma? I haven't found a good answer, if I'm totally honest. We can find a counselor, psychotherapist who's willing to sort of talk to us about it, but that isn't actually, how do you train people? I haven't found an answer. Please tell me if you know it, of the sort of, even the structure of how a training would go to enable leaders within an organization to deal with their staff who are going through trauma. I think it's something we really have to work on.
Well, thank you. You have at least teed up a really important, I would say, research and practice question for us to take on as
Please
a
figure that
field. It's certainly something that this conversation has absolutely highlighted the sort of the need for that, I would say, level and creating this space for that piece of the conversation about our own individual well-being, about the ability to support others in our organization and the people we're working with, and it's not surfaced enough. Okay, I want to, as a final just piece of the discussion, zoom out a bit. We've been talking about social entrepreneurship in conflict and post-conflict settings. And I just want to ask you to reflect as a closing question on the lessons that your work might offer for other settings, for social entrepreneurship and leadership more broadly. What can we learn from what it takes to lead in these settings that might apply more generally? And Alona, I'll turn to you first.
What doesn't kill us make us stronger. Fortunately, I've been repeating this thing many times during the last 3 years when I'm just displaced from my city, from my home, from everything that I had there. And it's very hard to tell about lesson for social entrepreneurs because it's academic. But I want to mention, first of all, important like to adaptability of business planning. Perhaps every businesses survive and thrive from different conflict settings when they plan not when they don't have only plan A, but they had like plan B through Z. The second lesson, perhaps we talk about a lot today about collaboration, people, our partners, and it's not about contracts, it's about like human to human relationship. The last things, perhaps it's about measuring, so measuring impact to understand it. Perhaps it's one of the important mission and goal for social enterprises to survive and thrive through all these conflict settings.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to pick up on the measuring bit because it links to what you were saying earlier, right? What counts as impact? How can we really understand that and not go in with a sort of context independent, sort of cookie cutter standard approach, but start with what's going on in this context and what would a meaningful change or impact look like here? Okay, thank you. Maybe turn to you, Freshta. What might we take from the insights you have about leadership into broader settings?
I think for people who want to make this world a slightly better place than what we have received it, I think you need to be an optimist. You need to believe that there's something good that you can do, whether anyone thinks how big or small it is. All of us, even in the worst of time, have the capacity to do some level of good, and we must do it. So being optimist about that is really important at the same time as you need to be realist. This combination is really important as you work. You need to adopt constantly every day, as you were saying. And you need to have a community, as you were saying, which I've noticed quite a lot, a good community, a fantastic team. My team is the days sometimes you often think that it's the leaders that need to give direction to the team, direction, energy, optimism, but it's both ways. There are times that you're extremely broken inside. Of course, you don't show it, but it's your team that picks you up and helps you to walk that day. And I think that should be also okay. And finally, have a secret garden somewhere. Just for yourself and people that you love, that whenever you feel like it's too much, go there, go often, and make sure that your flowers are flourished there and you're giving it enough water. And whoever has plucked your flower, whether it's oppression, whether it's a government that you don't like, whether it is the lack of funding, whatever that has burned your little beautiful flower or many of your flowers, it's okay, you can grow it again. And it's important to have that secret garden for yourself. And we all can define what that secret garden looks like. I do have actually one actual little secret place in Oxford.
Oxford is a great place for secret gardens, and I love that. Shoshana.
The thing that I think we have to keep in mind, particularly now as more traditional structures seem to fail, and by that I mean there is more conflict. There is more extreme weather events from climate change. There are more broken systems. And I think that the US administration's withdrawal from those systems is a fundamental material change in everything, right? And then I look at the way that all of our systems are built, and it's highly structured, right? You have, okay, every development organization has the education team and the economic development team and public health team, right? Okay. But again, this is like the scaling point. It doesn't work that way. All of my experience in all the places we work, right? We're a cultural heritage organization. That's what we do. But we also kind of do this other stuff, right? We do economic development. We do healthcare. We do primary education. We do vocational training. I can be anything to any person. No, what it actually is integrated projects. Why does it work well? Because of community. Right? Because you have a group of people who have lots of different multidimensional relationships together. And it is much more than the sum of its parts, right? In an increasingly conflicted world, it's very easy if we're talking about measurement and return on investment, it's very easy to put $1 in and get like 25 cents out because it's broken. The system is working against you. It's hard to get stuff done. People steal money, all this stuff, right? Whereas if you break down the silos and for a leader, for an organization, you pick a place, you pick a community, and you do everything that you can reasonably within your power and your funding, et cetera. I just think it's a way better way of doing projects is maybe it's the scaling wide or deep. Rather, I don't know what you would call that, but
Well, I think it's two things, and it's very timely. I've just been working on 2 academic papers on systems and system change for economic inclusion. And so some of the language there that we have used is about the scaling deep, but the other piece is thinking about not engineered or engineering systems or hard systems, but ecological and human systems, which are more fluid, more about relationships and connections and flexibility and emergence.
I'm going to write those down. Thank you.
Okay, let's turn to some questions from those of you here in the room and those of you joining online. And we have a mic that we will pass around.
Oop, that works. I thought I'd sit back and see if anyone else has. It's the obvious question that will probably come up is what has been the impact of the withdrawal of US aid, and what do you kind of see as some of the way forward for you following that change? Is it that significant compared to the other changes you faced?
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
Massive. It's not. So actually for us, and then did you all have any sort of US government? Okay. So you next. Okay. So, I mean, we lost a significant amount of funding in Afghanistan in particular, but some in Myanmar, some in Jordan. But we had diversified away from US government funding largely, so it's way less than 10% of what we do. So it is not existential. It will hurt. We will have to deal with it, but it's not existential. The bigger deal is that I think people probably are underplaying, because we as humans in our fundamental optimism tend to misdiagnose crises, underplay crises, right? We don't see how bad something is, how different something is. We try to make incremental change. The tapestry that has been the international system, I would use a weaving analogy, the tapestry was so much built around a US global order. That is true to different extents in different parts of the world, but so much of the money and the leadership, for better and worse, has been the US government. The one time that Article 5 of NATO was evoked was in response to 9/11, and the whole of Europe and quite a lot of the rest of the world went to Afghanistan in defense, apparently, of the United States, right? So then the US pulls the warp out of that. It's a material amount of that money. But it's also all of these different relationships. My husband was in the British cabinet and ran the British Development Office, and was a diplomat and was the chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee, the Defense Committee. And I remember him having a conversation with various bits of the diplomatic establishment in Britain at that point. And basically the answer to what do we do in X country is look at what America's doing and do a little bit less. So when you remove that bit, yes, it's fundamental, right? So I think the response to it is not, we have a $1 million gap that we need to fill. This is not about gap filling. This is a fundamental rewrite of the money and the relationships in the international order. And we shouldn't underplay it. And I don't know how to, I know how we're reacting to it. It's a lot about selling things into the Gulf, but we have very strong Gulf relationships anyway. Europe is super important. But the idea that we know what that looks like today is for the birds. Everyone needs to really recalibrate and look and think in a very flexible way, I think.
Yeah, another question. Do you think empowerment at the human scale can also change attitudes higher up? And is there a sort of trickle up effect that, if you are creating economic opportunities and, as you say, doing social entrepreneurship at the private level, people see, oh, this is generating income or this is boosting growth? And have you at all seen that move its way up to try to change attitudes?
Well, with our work, we have seen a lot of attitude change in terms of how children are treated. I can only talk about the work that we are doing and how our colleagues are seen within those communities and how book reading is seen within the communities. When we started our project in Kabul, Kabul is a city of around 7 million people, and in our public library, there was one single room, not even half of this, dedicated to children's library. And today we have these libraries going around the city, and 40,000 children visited in a month. And we have seen the attitude shift. At the beginning, when we started, parents were like, okay, why are you not teaching the school textbooks? But now today they understand that the joy of reading and libraries are really important. And before 2021, our work inspired policy awareness in a level that we saw a national level campaign on book reading that was led by the Ministry of Education, which we were very, very proud of it, looking at how one small little NGO, which was loved by children, and we use that power of love by children for book reading to show it to policymakers and tell them that the libraries that you've ignored, look at this, the children of the nation, how much they love it. And I think sometimes you just need to, for policymakers to, you just need to show some level of evidence and also human level connection. I remember when I was having those conversations with the Minister of Education before 2021, I kind of took him to his own childhood, asking him what was his favorite books and what did it mean? What does it mean for his children? And those conversations and connecting him and having him come to the library, that all made a change for the Ministry of Education to run that campaign. So from our example, yes, it does, but I don't know what have been your reflections.
Perhaps based on Ukrainian experience, and Ukraine social enterprise is more business oriented. What does it mean? That they try to create profit and after that reinvest as much as possible to the social component. For example, as urban space, like 80% of profits they reinvest in this social mission. Moreover, when I conducted interview with Ukrainian social entrepreneurs, I was really impressed because even in conflict settings, they talk about that we think have to increase our profit, but not for themselves, but do more, help more people, solve more problems. And according to this, I can say that social entrepreneurship as a sector, it really help economy development in general. So Ukrainian social entrepreneurs, they don't really like apply to different grants. They again talk about a lot during this interviews that they want to generate profit. They want to be business oriented and through this component to help people.
Yes, some questions from online.
Okay, so lots of good questions online. I'm clustering a little bit, two about scale. So the first one is, what is the role, what is the relationship between trust and scaling in your work? So how do you scale without losing trust, or how do you shift the focus from scaling to trust building? And the other question is, what is the perceived importance of building nonprofit anchor organizations in the places that you work in, which might provide, contextually necessary infrastructure or services, and how does that relate to scaling?
Okay, shall we dig in on the trust and scaling question? Do you want to take that?
Those are interesting. Yes, I think that, yes, fundamentally the trust element is key for scale, because I think a lot of the bad scaling that happens in the sort of international development sector, where you get, $100 million packages of large scale primary education projects rolled out across the country, and actually none of the kids are in school and who knows what's happening. The parts of international development that haven't worked as well is a fundamental, it's not a breakdown of trust. It didn't start with trust. So I think it's actually, the second question is interesting about a nonprofit anchoring organization. I do think that that's interesting. I found that nonprofit and charitable entities have really different connotations and lives in different places. Sometimes they are religious organizations. Sometimes they are, I think one of you said it about, ways to have a job, right? You set up an NGO and then you employ you and all your friends. There's lots of, and people think that's what it is. And so there's a lack of trust. But I think the idea that perhaps of a mission-driven organization as an anchor is a really interesting one. And I think probably right. I think that the for-profit entities within the development sector, while they do a lot of great stuff, can be problematic. But I think the trust point is a really wonderful one. Fundamentally, we didn't set up another project for 10 years. We were only in Afghanistan because I thought, why would I work somewhere else and start back at zero? It makes no sense. I can spend another $1 in Afghanistan based on the relationships I have. And I think, again, I was taught, as everybody else was, if somebody asks you to do more, of course, do more. So I think you actually have to push back against that and say, can I run something great at the next scale? And that's based on whether you have somebody great who you trust and a team who you trust to set up another version of it or to expand it.
Any reflections from the two of you?
Yes, I think I would say for us in our context, trust is everything. It just, the entire work, the foundation of work is trust. And how do you make sure that all the different stakeholders trust you and you're meeting them where they are? And I think that is really important. And that takes quite a lot when you're working in a conflict setting. It means that you need to work with a lot of stakeholders from different sides and meet them where they are, and to unpack that is a lot to unpack. What does that mean? But also this trust is time consuming. It takes a lot of time. You need to build upon it little by little every single day. It's almost like a little flower that you need to work and plant and wait for it to grow. But it has fantastic results. When people trust you, when different stakeholders trust you, it simply means that scaling becomes a lot easier. When your funders trust you, trust your work, trust your team, trust your idea, it means that you can work a lot more. So trust is a big part of it, but the biggest question probably as NGO leaders or as leaders in different sectors, we need to ask ourselves, and we often get very little time to ask these things. In practice, we do it, and that's why I think places like a school center is really important, because it gives leaders a space to take a breath and say, okay, let's think about this. What does this mean? Because in action, you constantly work on it, but you don't bring it in that academic frameworks to think about, okay, what does it mean to have trust? How much of our resources we want to consciously put it, because unconsciously you keep working on it consciously. And what can you learn from other settings? What can leaders learn? There's so much of knowledge and experience within organizations that are working in these settings. And some of these knowledge might actually die down because you work around trust and everything else. But if you don't have places where it could be, okay, I think that's where you stop.
They're telling us it's 4:30. No, but thank you. I think that's a wonderful place to end. And you've come back around to the garden medicine hour and the time that it takes and the nurturing to develop that, to build the connections, to build the trust. So thank you, Freshta. Thank you, Shoshana. Thank you, Alona, for joining us for this discussion. Thank you all who are here in person and online for joining us today. Those of you who are here in person, we will have a reception. I hope you can stay afterwards, just right in this space. And we do have one more seminar for the year, for the academic year on Friday, 13th of June. And we will be talking about place-based impact and how to balance local and global engagement. So I think we will pick up on some of the themes from this conversation. I hope to see you there. Thank you.